Alright, so today we're going to be talking about Charles Olivera's best submissions. This guy's the current UFC lightweight champion, and he's known for his incredible ground game. He's got a total of 16 submission wins, which is the most in UFC history. So let's take a look at some of his best work. Charles Olivera was born in Guarujá, Brazil on October 17, 1989. He began training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the age of 12, and he quickly became one of the most promising young grapplers in Brazil. He made his professional MMA debut in 2008, and he quickly racked up a string of victories. He made his UFC debut in 2010, and he won his first 2 fights in the promotion. However, Olivera then went on a losing streak, and he was released from the UFC in 2016. He bounced back by winning 4 straight fights in smaller promotions, and he was re-signed by the UFC in 2017. Since returning to the UFC, Olivera has been on a tear. He has won 12 of his last 14 fights, and he has submitted 10 of his opponents. He was formerly the UFC lightweight champion, and he is considered to be one of the best fighters in the world and the most exciting and dangerous submission artist in the UFC. So let's take a look at Olivera's top 10 submissions. Number 10, Christos Yagos, rear naked choke. This fight was a back and forth affair, with both fighters landing some good shots. However, Olivera was the more effective grappler, and he was able to take Yagos down and submit him with a choke in the second round. UFC Fight Night 40 took place on August 5, 2012 at the US Bank Arena in Cincinnati, Ohio. The main event featured a lightweight bout between Charles Olivera and Christos Yagos. Olivera was a favorite heading into the fight as he was ranked number 11 in the lightweight division at the time. Yagos was ranked number 52. The fight started with Olivera pressuring Yagos and throwing kicks. Yagos tried to counter with punches, but Olivera was able to avoid them. Olivera eventually took Yagos down and began to control him on the ground. Olivera looked for submissions, but Yagos was able to defend. Eventually, Olivera was able to get Yagos' back and lock in a rear naked choke. Yagos tapped out at 3:22 of the second round. Number 9, Nick Lentz, rear naked choke. On May 9th, 2014, Nick Lentz and Charles Olivera met in a featherweight rematch at UFC Fight Night 40. Their first fight in 2011 that was originally ruled a win for Olivera by rear naked choke in the second round was later overturned to a no contest due to an illegal knee that Olivera landed to Lentz's head when he was grounded. The rematch started with Lentz and Olivera trading strikes on the feet. Lentz landed a few good punches, but Olivera was able to counter with his own strikes. Olivera then took Lentz down and began to work his ground and pound. Lentz was able to defend himself for a while, but Olivera eventually found an opening and landed a hard elbow that dropped Lentz. Olivera was looking to avenge his earlier loss, and he did just that. He took Lentz down in the second round and landed a hard elbow that dropped Lentz. Olivera then followed up with a few more punches, and the referee stopped the fight at 2:11 of the second round. Number 8, Kevin Lee, guillotine choke. Olivera and Lee put on a wild fight, but Olivera ultimately came out on top with a guillotine choke submission in the third round. This was one of the most exciting fights of the year, and it was clear that both fighters were willing to die in the cage. Olivera started the fight strong, but Lee came back and took control in the second round. However, Olivera never gave up and he eventually got Lee in a guillotine choke. Lee tried to fight it off, but Olivera was too tight and he forced the tap. In the second round, Olivera took Lee down and landed some ground and pound. Lee got back to his feet, but Olivera continued to press the action. In the third round, Olivera landed a hard punch that dropped Lee. Olivera followed up with punches and elbows, then followed up with a guillotine choke, and Lee was forced to tap out at 28 seconds of the third round. Number 7, Eric Wisley, calf crusher. This was a big win for Olivera as it was his first UFC debut and it came against a more experienced opponent. It also showed off his submission skills, which have made him one of the most dangerous fighters in the lightweight division. Olivera's victory was impressive as he showed off his grappling skills and ability to finish fights quickly. It was also a good start to his UFC career as he proved that he could compete against the best fighters in the world. Olivera made quick work of Eric Wisley at UFC Fight Night 40, submitting him with a calf crusher in just 1:43 of the first round, solidifying that he would be a force to be reckoned with. Number 6, Tony Ferguson, armbar. Charles Olivera dominated Tony Ferguson from start to finish in a lopsided unanimous decision victory at UFC 256. Olivera showed that he was more than capable of hanging with Ferguson in the stand-up, landing some impressive boxing combinations. However, it was on the ground where Olivera truly excelled. He took Ferguson down multiple times and controlled him for large stretches of the fight, threatening with submissions on several occasions. In the first round, Olivera got Ferguson down early and nearly finished him with an armbar. Although Ferguson was able to escape, Olivera continued to pressure him and landed some heavy ground and pound. The second round, Olivera took Ferguson down, and this time he was able to secure a dominant position. He worked his way to Ferguson's back and threatened with a rear naked choke. Although Ferguson was able to defend the choke, Olivera was able to control him for the rest of the round. And in the third round, Olivera continued to pressure Ferguson and took him down again. He landed some ground and pound and threatened with submissions, but Ferguson was able to survive the final bell. Olivera won the fight by submission, and he extended his winning streak to 9 fights, while Ferguson suffered his first loss since 2017. Number 5. Clay Guida, rear naked choke. Olivera won this fight by submission in the first round, locking in a rear naked choke after a scramble. Guida had been controlling the fight on the ground up until that point, but Olivera was able to get the better of him in the scramble and secure the win. The fight started with Guida circling on the outside and Olivera throwing low kicks. Olivera landed a few good punches, and Guida took some damage around his right eye. After a particularly sharp exchange, Guida shot inside, but Olivera quickly caught him in a choke. Guida tried to escape, but Olivera squeezed tight and turned on his right side, forcing Guida to tap at the 218 mark of the first round. Number 4. Dustin Poirier, rear naked choke. It started with Poirier landing a few punches, but Olivera responded with a knee to the body and an elbow to the head. Poirier was stunned, but he recovered, and the two fighters continued to trade punches. Olivera was the more aggressive fighter, but Poirier was landing the cleaner shots. The third round was where the fight changed. Olivera landed a hard right hand and dropped Poirier. Poirier got back to his feet, but Olivera was all over him. He landed a series of punches and elbows, and Poirier eventually tapped out to a rear naked choke at 1:02 of the round. Olivera won the fight by submission and retained his UFC lightweight championship. This fight was the UFC lightweight title, and Olivera won by unanimous decision. Poirier is a former interim UFC lightweight champion, but Olivera was the better fighter on the night. Number 3. Justin Gaethje, rear naked choke. This fight was for the UFC lightweight title, and Olivera won by rear naked choke in the first round. Gaethje is a former interim UFC lightweight champion, but Olivera was too much for him. And it was a wild one, with both fighters landing big shots. Gaethje started strong, landing leg kicks and punches that wobbled Olivera. Olivera responded by taking Gaethje down and landing ground and pound. The two fighters continued to trade punches and kicks, and both of them were hurt at various points. In the final minute of the round, Olivera landed a right hand that dropped Gaethje. Gaethje escaped the triangle choke, but Olivera was able to get his back and lock in a rear naked choke. Gaethje tapped out to the choke at 3:22 of the first round. Olivera won the fight by submission in the first round. It was a thrilling fight that showed the heart and determination of both fighters. Number 2. David Tamer, rear naked choke. Olivera and Tamer put on a great fight, but Olivera ultimately came out on top with a rear naked choke submission in the second round. Tamer was winning the fight early on, but Olivera started to take over in the second round. He landed some big punches and takedowns, and he eventually got Tamer in a rear naked choke. Tamer tried to fight it off, but Olivera was too strong and he forced the tap. The first round was a close one, with both fighters landing good shots. Tamer was the more aggressive fighter, but Olivera was effective with his counterpunches. In the second round, Olivera started to take control of the fight. He landed a hard elbow that opened a cut on Tamer's eye. Olivera then took Tamer down and locked in a rear naked choke. Tamer tried to defend, but Olivera was too strong, and he forced the tap out at 2:43 of the round. The win was Olivera's 5th consecutive victory. He was subsequently awarded the Performance of the Night bonus for his performance. Tamer suffered a broken orbital bone in the fight and was forced to withdraw from his next fight. Number 1. Darren Elkins, triangle choke. This fight was Olivera's UFC debut, and he made an immediate impact by submitting Elkins with a triangle choke in the first round. Elkins is a tough and experienced fighter, but Olivera was too much for him. He controlled the fight from the start and eventually locked in the triangle choke, forcing Elkins to tap out. It started with Olivera immediately taking the center of the octagon and pressuring Elkins. Elkins tried to keep his distance and land punches from the outside, but Olivera was too quick and too aggressive. Olivera eventually got Elkins to the ground, and he immediately began working on a submission. Elkins tried to defend, but Olivera was too strong and too skilled. He eventually locked in a triangle choke, and Elkins was forced to tap out at 3:21 of the first round. He was able to control the fight from the start and eventually submit Elkins with his signature triangle choke. Olivera is a very dangerous fighter, and he has a knack for getting his opponents into submission holds. He's also a very tough fighter, and he has never been finished by strikes. These are just a few of Charles Olivera's best submissions. He is one of the most dangerous submission artists in the UFC, and he is always a threat to finish the fight with a submission. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed learning about Charles Olivera's best submissions. If you did, be sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more MMA content. Thanks for watching.